Hello, everyone. I'm Traci Arieli, end of life doula and founder of Comforting Closure. Welcome to another episode. This week, we're talking about a type of care that rarely gets the attention it deserves: pediatric palliative and hospice care. It means more than what most people think. It's not only for the final days, it's care that supports seriously ill children and their families throughout the course of an illness. That might mean pain management during treatment. It might mean emotional support during long hospital stays. It might mean helping a child live their remaining days surrounded by family in a peaceful setting. Here's the problem. Most families don't know this kind of care exists until they're in crisis. And even then, it's not always available. Resources are limited, services are fragmented, and very few places offer a model that puts the whole child and the whole family at the center of care. George Mark Children's House is one of those rare places that is changing that. Located in the San Francisco Bay Area, they offer pediatric palliative and hospice care in a residential home-like environment. Children receive expert medical support, but they also get to swim, paint, play music, and be surrounded by people who care, not just for them, but for their siblings and for their parents too. And here's what makes it even more remarkable. Families don't get a bill. Today, I'm joined by Shekinah Eliassen, CEO of George Mark Children's House. We'll talk about what makes their model so different, how they help families navigate impossible choices, and what it will take to build more homes like this across the country. So grab a warm drink, find a comfortable seat, and join us for the conversation. Welcome, Shekinah, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Traci. It's an honor to be here today.
So let's start. And I'm curious, what brought you to this work and how did your path lead to George Mark Children's House?
Such a joy to be chatting with you today. So my journey to George Mark Children's House is through our beautiful son, Lars. So my husband, Peter, and I had a beautiful little boy named Lars, who was born 13 years ago, May 2012, here in the Bay Area with a life-limiting diagnosis. He had a brain condition. He was born having seizures in the hospital, and immediately we knew things were not great. He was taken by the nurses. APGAR score was very low, and he had some immediate attention, intubated. He was having trouble breathing. So through a series of onslaught of doctors and unknown and concern, within about 48 hours, we were told he had some kind of severe condition, and we were transferring to the acute care center at Children's Hospital Oakland. So he was taken in an emergency vehicle over to Oakland Children's Hospital. And it was there that he had MRI that was conclusive, that he had a brain condition, and he had a terminal case where 70% of his brain was affected. And as we're sitting there with the neurologist who'd been in the neonatal intensive ward for 30 years, she told us going into the MRI, she was hoping he'd be a kid that had seizures that we could treat. A lot of children have seizures that are treatable, and that was the hope. Coming out of that, she sat us down and said, no, he has a very serious case. You should start thinking about his quality of his life, because he's probably not going to live very long. And so, in our shock and our sadness, we were surrounded by an amazing medical team at Children's Hospital Oakland. And there were multiple people there in that team, the social worker, the palliative care nurse, and our chaplain, who told us about this place called the George Mark Children's House that just happened to be here in the Bay Area, which of course we had never heard of. And they said, this is a place you could go and be with your son for his last days. So that was our first introduction. Lars lived for 21 precious days, and we spent the last 9 days and nights in the family suite at George Mark 13 years ago. And Lars died there, and I'm happy to talk more about that. But that was the initial introduction, thanks to the medical team that told us about George Mark.
And so fast forward 13 years, you're the CEO now.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about that, how you were invited
You know how life goes, where some things happen that you never can anticipate how that thing or that trauma or that experience will open the door or the window to many others that you never could have imagined. And that, of course, was the case with our son, Lars. After he died at George Mark, and we had just a really impactful, heartwarming, and you know, heart-filled time with him. We were surrounded by an incredible medical team and aquatic therapy and music and art and a support team. We as a couple were able to really enter the world again after such a devastating loss. Our community was along the journey with us. They came and visited Lars. We had a beautiful ceremony of his life after he died. We bathed him in tea water as a ceremony after he passed. All the things that a place that offers this kind of care uniquely provides for a family allowed us to enter the world again and stay connected to George Mark after such a devastating loss, and to live Lars's legacy further. So we stayed connected. My husband joined the board, and I would speak and fundraise for George Mark and volunteer in any way that I could. And that was really my role, was a fundraiser, a speaker, an advocate, and a volunteer. And then our careers, we both had corporate business careers, took us abroad in 2018 with two more children that came along, perfectly healthy and know all about Lars. We celebrate his birthday every year, and they're a part of that. We moved to London in 2018, and I joined the board. The board called and asked me if I would join the board. My husband had left the board, so I served as a board member. And during that tenure, I got to know the CEO, of course, and the board. And the CEO started planning her retirement. And so she called and asked me, living in London, while I was living in London, would you consider moving back to the Bay Area and being my successor, interviewing with the board, and carrying on Lars's legacy in this way? And that was a question that I couldn't say no to. And my husband is such a great partner. And I was looking for more purpose in my business career. And so we moved back as a family 3 years ago. In
Mm.
September, we moved back and took on this role of helping more families get the care that we received and growing our services and our impact for the community.
It's telling, very telling that you say you never heard of George Mark before this. And being a doula, you would think in the Bay Area, you would think that I would have heard about George Mark Children's House. And I had not. It was actually through a mutual friend that I
Yes.
came in contact with you, but I got the pleasure of visiting. And it is such an amazing place. I mean, whenever I think about the tour that you guys gave me, that was provided, and you showed me everything, it is such a special place. I feel this like tears start to come in my eyes, not because I'm sad, but because it's such a beautiful and special place. For you, for someone who, if you were telling someone about George Mark that has never heard of it, how would you describe what it is and what makes it different?
It's beautiful. Thank you for coming and seeing it, because it is so powerful to be at a place that's designed for families and kids to have their best days. I mean, one way another mom spoke about it was, we went to George Mark with our child to live and not to die,
Yeah.
because that's really how it's designed. It's on 5 acres. It's a beautiful house. It's designed to feel like a home, not a clinic. We have 8 patient rooms and 2 family suites, sunlit rooms. It's a community of colleagues and staff that work there for the purpose of overnight stays for kids to come, for respite care and end of life care. So I know we've talked so far about the end of life for kids, but the majority of the patients that we see come for respite. And these are some of their best days that they have. These are children who have a life limiting condition. They're often in wheelchairs, they're often nonverbal, and they can have really great days. And that's what we provide. So it's kind of like camp or Disneyland for kids. We have a huge aquatic therapy pool. We have puppies and ponies and kittens that come. We have art, and we have music and horticulture therapy. So it's a happy place for kids to come. We have nurses around the clock that are caring for the medical needs, and then we have volunteers who are making these days just amazing. And we just delight in making these days extraordinary for kids. And then when we have kids who are there for their end of life, we are also there to support the siblings, the moms, the dads, the aunts and uncles that are coming and visiting, and surrounding them with really wraparound care so that they are getting nurturing and support while their child is also getting that during that journey in that phase of their life. So yes, it is such a powerful place. It's uniquely designed to do this. It was built from the ground up by our founder, Dr. Kathy Hull. It's named after George and Mark, her two brothers, who died young, far too young, and she named George Mark in their honor. And she is a clinical psychologist and saw children dying in the hospitals on the oncology floor at Children's Hospital Oakland over 25, 30 years ago, and said there must be a better way for kids and families at this time, and designed George Mark with that intent. So hopefully that gives you a little picture of this special place that we want everyone to know about who needs to know about us.
I love how the community, we live in the Bay Area, we have a lot of tech, how the community came out. And I know that Pixar came out and helped design little hummingbirds
That's right.
in and in the garden, which was so special. They put there have to be like 19 of them, I heard.
Yep, there's about 18 of these bronze, beautifully molded hummingbirds in the garden placed throughout for children and siblings to try to find them. It's a bit of a hide and seek. And hummingbirds mean a lot to a lot of us at George Mark because they're all around the gardens, as are butterflies and other beautiful creatures. And our son Lars would open his eyes and look at the hummingbirds when he was there. And so now our family, whenever we see a hummingbird, we always say, "Oh, Lars is here with his buddies coming to say hi." And it makes us feel closer to him. But yes, we do have this incredible relationship with many organizations in the Bay Area, including Pixar. And they also do beautiful art montages for families that come. Often they pick a theme that their children resonate with. We have a beautiful art room, and in the art room, we have a family named the Cantwells, and their son Jonah died at George Mark, and they had a connection to the story Jonah and the Whale. And so they have a beautiful piece of art done by Pixar, which is a mural of Jonah and the whale, and each of the families and the siblings are all whales on the mural. Beautiful mural. And they just had a baby, the family, a little girl named Joy, and she was added to the mural as a whale with a pink bow. So Pixar came back and they painted in the next sibling, and their dog Murphy is also in the mural. So it just goes to show how we really personalize the experience thanks to our partners. And we want to make it right for that family, whatever feels right to them and their memory and the legacy of their child.
Where do kids usually come from, or the children usually come from? Is it just in the Bay Area, or do you have people from out all over the US coming in?
Majority of kids come from the greater Bay Area, but we do have children and families come from out of state. And we've had one or two come from abroad. Often it's difficult to transfer a child at that stage to another location, but it is very possible. And if the family or the children and the medical team would like to do it, we are in the business of saying yes whenever we can. And so we welcome families from out of state. We can talk about the fact that families never receive a bill for their services. That is
Yeah.
very much the design of George Mark, the vision of our founder, Dr. Kathy Hull, because during these trying times, the last thing a family needs to deal with is fighting medical insurance or medical bills. And so our policy is we fundraise, we write grants, we ask for philanthropy from our community so that during these times, families don't have to face that. And we welcome families to come from wherever they need to come to stay with us.
And it is a small home. It is a small home like setting. There are 9 beds.
There are 8 patient rooms and 2 family suites, so
Okay.
10. And then we have another bed, which is a George Mark room, where after a child passes, the family can have a visit time for visitation. And that room is available for families and for guests to come and, spend the time there before the child leaves George Mark.
The two family rooms, I got a tour of one of the family rooms. It really amazed me because there's a small kitchen in the room. It is a place where the family, of course, there's more than one bed. It is like a little almost like a little apartment. I would say that so
Mhm.
families could spend time there, and their children can get the help that they need also, but spend time as a family, which is really special, and
That's
have
right.
privacy also. So it's not like they feel like they're in a hospital or a doctor's office or anything like
Mhm.
that. It is a home.
It is a home, and that is a family suite with a kitchen, restroom, um, living room space, and then a bedroom. We've had families of five often staying in there with their child. If the child's dying, they'll often have the child with them, or the child could be in one of the patient rooms. We've had an unhoused family of eight stay there while the older brother was on oncology respite, and they would stay every time he came. They would stay with us. Mom and the seven siblings and the older brother were all in this family suite, and the kids were running up and down the hallway. Our child life therapist was doing activities with them constantly, and it was an honor to be able to spread out the space for them in those rooms.
So you offer pediatric, palliative, and hospice care. How do you explain the difference, or what is the difference between the pediatric palliative care and hospice care?
It's a great question. So, hospice care is defined by a diagnosis from a medical professional with 6 months or less to live. Palliative care is not defined by that term, meaning you can be on palliative care without a definite indication from medical staff that it's 6 months or less. So that's one distinction. The other distinction is palliative care is about holistic care. It's about comfort care, it's about extending quality of life, and it includes an interdisciplinary team, medical team, often a psychosocial support team, so a therapist, child life therapist, palliative care nurse, palliative care doctor, and the medical professionals, depending on what the diagnosis is, working as a collaborative team to understand the wishes of the family or the caretaker and the patient, and really working toward those wishes with reducing pain, reducing suffering, and extending quality of life. So that is a conversation that's had between that group, and often a really important part of the journey because it changes throughout the diagnosis over time, and those conversations change based on how the patient is presenting, how the condition is evolving. So having that team to connect, to discuss, and then kind of steward the family through that process and the patient. Palliative care is beautiful, and it often, as I've come to learn, is a word that people associate with hospice or associate with dying. And it's kind of a scary word, but it really is a beautiful thing. And sometimes children go in remission after palliative care. It's
Mhm.
not necessarily a death sentence. And part of the work that we're doing is trying to help elevate palliative care and the importance of that care so that the quality of life is really the most important part and the quality of the time that is left.
With the palliative care, you could still receive life-sustaining measures. So you're not saying, no, we're just doing comfort care. You're not going into hospice. It is, where in hospice, you're not receiving those life-sustaining measures anymore. And that's how it is with children's hospice care too, correct?
Yes, again, it comes back down to what are the wishes of the family, the caretakers, and the child? And um, it's sometimes these are really hard conversations because if it's a terminal condition, life-sustaining measures sometimes extend the life beyond when the child has much quality of life. But the conversations are what's most important. Understanding the prognosis and the potentials of how long do we keep treating? Do we keep trying to cure? And when is it time to change tact? And that's all part of the conversation. And it's honestly one of the hardest ones you never hope to have.
Yeah.
I will say parenting, the parents that go through these journeys of losing a child, it's just not natural. It's not normal. It's not what any of us, genetically are designed to do, to see your child die. Like that's just not the way it should work. And that it teaches one a lot about parenting as a result, because you have to make choices sometimes for your child that you are not designed to make.
We've already talked about the biggest misconception about palliative care,
Mhm.
which is people feel that it's the same as hospice, it's the same as giving up. Are there any other
Mhm. Mhm.
misconceptions that you constantly or that you hear on a pretty consistent basis?
Not a misconception, but a inability to embrace the fact that some children die, that children die, right? I think that's one of these taboo things, is to talk. One of the things, one of the reasons why I believe places like George Mark, which there are some in America and more growing, which we can talk about too, don't want to face the facts, because it's so hard to imagine that children will die, and it just feels like this is too hard. A lot of people, it's just too hard to talk about these things, which I respect and I get. And the more we talk about it, the more we create space for families who are going through this, and for the community that does need to be heard and seen and embraced. And so that's more of a just a cultural barrier. There are a lot of cultures that embrace death very differently, more openly, celebrating death, and it's a part of, their culture in a very different way. And so I think we have a lot to learn from that in the West. And conversations like this, and seeing a place like George Mark, where it's a beautiful place for families to be. And really, it's a lot about how the families and the siblings have a child that has a life-limiting diagnosis, whether they live into their 20s or 30s, how they're coping and how they're making it through their days. And then the families that actually have a child that dies, how they make it through their days and enter the world again. All of that helps, having conversations like this help those families get through that.
And I know we've spoken very briefly about choices that these families have to navigate. Um, in a facility like George Mark, how do you help them navigate these really tough choices that they have to make?
It's beautiful because we have really great partnerships in the Bay Area with the medical communities here, with the hospitals, and there are a couple of wonderful hospice agencies that do hospice for in-home for children. And sometimes those kids come to George Mark for their respite stay, so they could be on hospice, but they come for some great days. Or they decide they don't want the families, for whatever reason, it's not the best situation for them to die at home, so they come to George Mark. So that's one way, is that we're in communication with our medical partners on the journey that these kids are going through in the hospital, getting treatment, going through clinical trials, whatever it might be. And then if and when they come to George Mark, and then once they're at George Mark, we have an incredible director of clinical programs and her medical staff, which are the nurses, and our medical director are in touch with the family to just discuss the prognosis, um, what their wishes are while they're with George Mark. We have a child life therapist. We have um, multiple different therapists to work with the kids and the families, and we have a chaplain. So they're all on duty, on hand to support the family through their journeys. Our child life therapist is often customizing activities and games and music and art and animals. One little boy that came, he wanted to meet a baby cow. So we had a partner that like brought in a cute little cow. We've had all kinds of really fun animals come, chinchillas and baby kangaroos. And so she'll ask them, what kind of animal would you like to? And then so sure enough, baby kangaroo shows up. We've got these great partnerships. And we're so
Okay.
thankful for them. But on the medical side, when it's starting to get closer to end of life, our chaplain and our therapist team will meet with the family and talk about what dying looks like, for example, what you might
Oh,
expect your child to, how to present as it gets closer to the time. And then, of course, what are their wishes? burial or cremation or any ceremonies, or, they start to talk about that. We have, brochures and pamphlets also, but just really holding hands of the family as death is approaching. And, often a lot of families have visitors coming and visiting them. And then, our staff is checking in with them. When do you want to kind of focus in and, hover or be closer to your child? And so they're there to buffer, they're there to support, and to have the hard conversations, as they did with us when our son was dying. Of course, we didn't know how that would be. And so they were there with us every step of the way.
How
It's
about
incredible.
after? How about after the grieving
Abs
period?
Yes, great. I'm so glad you asked that. So, after, we have an amazing bereavement support group. We have a parent resource group led by parents who are either respite parents or end of life parents. We have workshops that our clinical team and our psychosocial team offer. So, parent resources, workshops for bereaved parents. We've done a father only bereaved group. And then one of our really special, I mean, they're all special groups, is a siblings workshop. So
Mm.
Kyle, who's our incredible child life therapist, and some amazing partners, lead SIBS shops where we invite siblings of respite patients, and then one for end of life patients. And they do like games and activities, and they get attention because they're often the ones who, sometimes are second fiddle to the sibling who really needs around the clock care. And they open up and they meet other kids who have a sibling who has a diagnosis, and they talk about that. And Pixar and Disney are partners for us for that. We took the kids to Pixar and they got a tour, they got to meet some of the artists, they got to see a lot of you know the film characters. And just, we delight in giving these kids the attention that they need. And it's a therapy session. They don't know that per se, but it's like therapy, active therapy, and being a part of a community. So, and then we also have family events, at least 3 a year, to bring all the families, whether they're respite or end of life families, back to George Mark to have family days. We have a pumpkin day that's coming up in October. We have a summer picnic where it's like a fair. I brought my daughter who was 11, and she's like, "Mom, it's like a real fair." There were, bean tosses and snow cones and fire trucks and music and clowns and food and activities. So that's in the summer. And then we have in December, it's called International Child Remembrance Day. It's the second Sunday of every year in December. Internationally, every child who has died is honored. And we do a candlelight vigil at George Mark.
Mm.
And we invite all the families back. Everyone gets a candle. We walk the premises. We have photos hung of any family who is open to that. And it's a memory moment. And we then read the names of all the children who have died at George Mark in our last 21 years, and it's over 350 kids. All the names are read to honor them. So we do a lot to keep our families connected and feeling seen and part of a community. My kids love going back too. It's great.
That is wonderful and so important, to hold these events where people are remembered, where the children are remembered. That's how they live on.
That's right. Saying their name. You know anyone who's lost a child, and if you know them well enough, ask them,
Yeah.
say their name, because it is a way that you keep them alive in the memory. Yeah.
So we've talked about the type of care that the children who are suffering from an illness that they receive. I've heard animals. I've heard art. I've heard swimming. Tell me what else you do. There's music, I think.
Oh my gosh, we have music every week. We have a music therapist, Rebecca. She comes and she sings, and she again customizes the song based on what they like. She knows, we ask the parents, what are their favorite things to do. Horticulture, we have a beautiful horticulturist that come and does activities with the kids. The grounds are designed with low, kind of wheelchair level flowers and beautiful plants. So the children are interacting with picking plants or making bouquets. and the sensory is also really great. And then we have a kitchen staff that's making meals for the kids and the families, depending on their, their needs and their particular food requirements. And then we also have special events where we have partners with Star Wars and many of the characters. We also have a great partnership with the Giants, San Francisco Giants. We have players come often and sign. That was another kind of family event we did. Slice House and Tony Diamani is one of our partners, and they came, and two of our Giants players came, and we had a pizza party, and there was like pizza pies being thrown in the air by Tony and his team, and the Giants players were signing, cards and hats for the kids. If a child has a particular sports like wish, we do little wishes for kids. Then Kyle, our child life therapist, does everything she can to see if the athlete, if they're Bay Area based, can come and visit. Yeah, so really, I mean, it is. We're hoping to build more partnerships with the Bay FC, the football club, the women's football club here, and Valkyries. We've got some great contacts there. So just building out our network of ways to support families. We also have families go to the Giants games, and we had a family actually on the field a few weeks ago throwing the first pitch. So it's just the more we can just delight in these families, the better, because they deserve it.
Yes, they do, definitely. Um, so being a family and taking, well, being a caregiver is really just taking care of your child in that position is really difficult. And George Mark offers so much to support these families. What impact have you seen from offering respite or memory making or other activities in a home-like environment?
Mm.
What have you seen from the families?
Yeah, we're actually starting a study on that, more of a quant-based study about the
Good.
impact of this type of care. So we'll keep you posted about that. But we've got a partnership with some researchers who want to study the impact of this wraparound palliative care for longevity and wellness. But anecdotally, we see these families, first of all, staying together more because they get that much needed respite that they need to take care of themselves and go on date nights, or take care of their other child and all the things that you need when you need a babysitter that can take care of a kid that really needs round the clock attention. We also see them coming back more for these family days and building this community. We see them referring more children to us. We just had a first-time respite mom and her daughter come and stay at George Mark this week. And I met her because I really try to meet the first-time families when they come. And she has said she'd been thinking for so long about coming to George Mark, but she was really nervous and anxious to let go of her daughter because it's hard when you're the one who knows everything, knows their nonverbal cues, knows everything. Really hard to let go and trust that someone else could do it, and take care of your daughter. But she was actually following us on social media, which I was like, oh wow, great. People are really watching our social media because our marketing manager, Ricky, does such a good job. And I told him, I was like, someone's following us and came to George Mark because of what she's seen. And her daughter goes to a school for kids with disabilities. And one of the moms there was very advocating for George Mark because that mom's daughter also comes to George Mark. So we see that too. We see where families are referring families to us, and that trusted community is so important to give them the permission to try to let go a little bit and trust us. So that's really helpful. We hope to see more of that because since I've been leading George Mark, a big focus of mine over the past few years is just to take care of more kids and families and give them that break. And we've taken care of almost 50 new kids this year than we did last year. So we're taking care of like 130, 140 kids a year now because we've increased our patient care program. And almost 140 new families, like moms, dads, sisters, siblings, are also under our care. And we still have on average one-ish bed open a day. So we want more families to know about us. So if you hear nothing else from this podcast, it's if you know of any family who could benefit from our services, like please send them to us. We have a referral button on our website, georgemark.org. You can call George Mark directly and talk to our intake team. They're nurses. They know how to talk to families about their kids and can help diagnose and hopefully have them come stay with us, because we want more kids to get this kind of care and more families to get this support.
Yeah, you mentioned how the one mother that and her daughter that are there right now, or the daughter's right there,
Yep.
how the mother was really nervous.
Mhm.
Can this group of people take care of my child? Do they know my child well enough? And one thing that I saw when I was there is that these rooms that the children are staying at, they have day beds to the side. And I was told there's an extra bed in there because the first night that, it's like a 2 night trial first. The first night, the
Right.
parent stays there, one of the parents, to show the nurses and to show everyone what the child
Mhm.
likes, how the child likes to be given their medicine, how, like, all these really small, minute details that only a parent would know. And so the staff really takes and supports that and changes the way that they tend to the child based on those needs. So it was
Mhm.
really eye-opening to me because I'd never been exposed to that. So you do a great job.
Yeah, no, you described it beautifully. And it's designed for families to come and learn, for us to learn from them, and then them all those things, and they can see how we care for them. This little girl that was there went in the aquatic therapy pool, and mom was there with her. Mom was taking videos and was like, "This is amazing." And she fell asleep in the spa. We have nurses holding her, right? And these kids are often very tight, very constricted, and often it's just they just melt in the water. And my son Lars was the same. He was having seizures and he's so relaxed. And I talked to mom. She was like, "I was really nervous coming here, but I'm feeling really good. Like, I'm happy we're here. I know this is where we need to be and we should be." And I was like, what are you gonna do your night away?" And she's like, "I'm gonna do a date night." So, right, it's
Yeah.
and it's a joy to be able to offer that for families. So yeah, I think we're also seeing more referrals coming from other places too, which is definitely the goal. We now take cancer care patients. So it's a program we launched about 2 years ago. Kids on respite, if they're in between treatment or they're in remission or going toward remission, we offer that. And then of course, if it's end of life, we offer that for kids too. So that is something that we're just so thrilled. We've been fundraising specifically for cancer programs because we don't have any insurance reimbursement for that currently. So fundraising for that has been great. And we are taking respite kids for cancer, which we're so thrilled to be able to do and offer that as well.
What are the ages of the children who are there that receive this help?
Great questions. We take children from birth. So my son was 19 days old or so when we took him. So from birth immediately all the way through up until their 25th birthday.
Okay. And how do families access this kind of care? And yeah, how do, let's say I'm in the Greater Bay Area or even beyond that, can I talk to my doctor and say, "Hey, I want to go to George Mark. Can you please make that happen?"
Absolutely. If you or you know of someone who could benefit from our services, we need a referral from a medical team. We often get referrals from a friend saying, "Hey, my friend isn't might be interested. Can you contact them?" And the friend, or they would contact their friend would contact us, and then we'd say, "Let's connect through your medical team." So generally, it's our medical team to their medical team talking about the condition, the needs, the acuity, and what kind of support they need. And that's the core referral is through the medical team. We often also get referrals through regional centers of California. So the regional centers support kids and families of different types of conditions. Regional centers, in our case, take kids with life-limiting diagnosis and developmental disabilities. And now those regional centers are really large, some of our biggest referral partners for children. And we talk to the social workers there and the case team managers there. They refer children through our team. Another referral is through if a child does go on hospice through a hospital partner. we're in great relationship with many of the in-home hospice partners in the Bay agencies in the Bay Area, and they will refer children to us often. And then the medical doctors throughout, all the local hospitals we have great relationships with. So those are generally the main ways that we get referrals, but some rehab centers and some, prenatal centers and other areas where, reach out to us, and we're really excited to partner with any family and any medical partner that feels this would be a good place for families and children.
Why do you think that there are so few places like George Mark across the country?
So now that I've been here 3 years, I understand a bit more around the financial infrastructure behind it. So I think there's a couple of reasons. So the first, like we talked about, is people don't like admitting that children die. People don't like, thinking about where kids go with disabilities, right? It's a cultural barrier that we have. And so there's not as much advocacy for it. There's not as much visibility for it. There's not as many like waivers and policy and visibility behind it, just because it's a hard thing. The other reason is a place like George Mark, the way it's designed and has been around for now 21 years, was designed with the best experience in mind for kids and family. And it's an expensive kind of operation. Because of the size, location, we're not at a hospital. We're in San Leandro, on a beautiful, area, piece of land where George Mark was built. And so we're not immediately adjacent to a hospital. Not that I think we should be necessarily, but there is a strategy to that, because it's a direct opportunity for families to go if they need to go and leave the hospital and take their child somewhere that's designed for end of life or respite. There are multiple other homes in America, and there's a group that I'm part of and advocating with called the Center for Pediatric Palliative Care Homes. And I'm on the advisory council that's this center is founded by Jonathan Cotter, who is the founder of Ryan House, which is a similar house in Arizona. And the Ryan House has a partnership with a Hospice of the Valley in the Phoenix area. And so they have this really great partnership where they offer hospice and respite. So, and then there's a handful of other houses that are standing and then many in development. But because of A, the cultural barriers and advocacy and lack of consistent reimbursement, and B, the lack of embracing the fact that children die, there aren't as many turnkey models. One of the things that I'm working with here in the Bay Area with Stanford and UCSF as partners, and the holding company, which is a innovative system-led design organization, is around identifying other reimbursable income streams for a place like George Mark. So many of the services that we offer, actually therapies, aquatics, many of our other services actually potentially could be reimbursable. We just haven't actually cracked that with insurance providers and other partnerships and contracts. So there's a financial underpinning that we are working on to try to establish a place like George Mark to be less reliant on philanthropy. I think a place like George Mark will always need some level of philanthropy, but we are very reliant on philanthropy now. And so which we are so grateful for all of those community partners and individuals who are helping support George Mark, because it is essential to us keeping the lights on. And I believe as the CEO, it's part of my responsibility to help us find other viable financial pathways. So we've kicked off a work stream now with our medical partners to identify pilots that we want to launch around reimbursable funding streams. So my hope is that we're able to provide more of a blueprint for California. I know of at least 2 homes that want to start, one in LA and one in San Diego. And I'd love to be able to help them with a business plan startup of here's some other ways that you can immediately get some reimbursement for your services. Families never see a bill. It'll go through reimbursement channels that are viable, but we just need to help crack that. So I think it's the cultural barriers and the financial barriers, I think, are two of the biggest reasons why there aren't more homes like this. And then strategic partnerships. We're working on that too. But it's these partnerships with hospices and medical centers and other community-based care that could allow places like George Mark to be more financially viable.
What do you think it would take to build more? This is kind of an add-on question to the one, but what do you
Hmm.
think it would take? What do we need to change in order to build more homes like George Mark across the U.S. to make
Hmm.
this as more of a norm?
Well, I would say first, it's this type of care should be part of pediatrics. It should be part of the continuum of care for pediatrics because children will get sick. They won't all die, but they will get sick. Some of them will have life-limiting diagnosis, and some of them will die. And until we can look that in the straight in the face and say, this is a fact, how do we build a medical community-based system in America to support this type of thing? Um, we're not gonna get there until we can all say that. Now there can be pockets of that happening, like they're happening by innovative, passionate individuals who see the importance of this and are pushing this, up the hill. There's also some really great movements happening through this center I talked about, the Center of Pediatric Palliative Care Homes, to build a pediatric palliative care license. And this has just passed in Iowa by an incredible woman who had a son named Mason, and she passed a law called Mason's Law at her local state and Senate, her local Senate and House, called Mason's Law, to allow a pediatric palliative care licensure that offers hospice and respite care coverage. And the hope is that there will also be reimbursement waivers for this care through state funding. So there is movement, there is advocacy, there is, some momentum, but I would think, you know, every medical center ideally would be teaching about palliative care and the importance of palliative care for pediatrics and for adults, and this kind of movement around the importance of that as a continuum of care in America. And then probably some really innovative, inspiring leaders to, get the movement going and to fundraise for it and to build visibility around it. We need a campaign. We need a, movement. And this is a piece of that. This podcast and the work we're doing, to elevate the importance of it and then to find advocates and funders and spokespeople to help build a groundswell.
Yeah, it just surprises me so much that doctors, you know, don't really talk about or know much about palliative care. That's just adult palliative care. They don't understand. And it's getting better, but children's palliative care, as you said, it's so taboo to talk about. It is, we live in a society that can't even talk about a 96-year-old dying that's
Mhm.
had a wonderful life.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it is something we really need to work on.
Mhm.
It's going to happen. And you could either have support a great quality of life for those you love, be it an adult or a child, or put your head in the sand and that quality of life isn't going to be that great. Which one would you prefer?
I think the other piece on that, though, too, I fully agree, is that I think it's hard for the medical community to give up on treating to some extent because so much of their training and their
Sorry.
purpose. Hello, who's that?
That's Merlin.
Merlin.
He just heard his food go off. He's very food motivated.
Perfect. I get it. I love it. Um, but my point about that was I do believe that in some, and I've read articles about this, and there's Sarah Wildman had wrote a New York Times article about this, about her daughter dying of cancer in the Boston area, and how her medical team was so focused on treat, 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 treat,
Mhm.
treat, even though no one um, with her daughter's diagnosis at her daughter's age had outlived it. And so it was, I'm paraphrasing. So forgive me, she will do a much better job of articulating this, but I was so moved by her article in the New York Times because it was like, why is it my daughter was more embracing her death than my medical team? Because partially I believe that doctors, not all, but doctors are trained to cure, to treat, to fix. And that is just really hard for many to understand that there's a point when we have to just let life run its course. And some lives are meant to be shorter, as painful as that is, and to then meet that moment and meet that family. So there is some training in the medical world too. Uh, as a route of helping us advocate for palliative care when it's needed.
I 100% agree. The work, one of the things that most doulas, including myself, really try to do is educate. And we want to change that narrative and make these subjects that are taboo to talk about today not taboo. I do that on a one-to-one basis, but it needs to be, I know for the needle to move, the medical community, the assisted living facilities, schools need to start, health classes need to start. So it's much bigger. These it's in order for that needle to move, in order for this not to be taboo, these bigger places need to get involved, need to change that. It needs to
Mm-hmm.
come from those types of areas.
That's right. I fully agree. It's kind of like that example of in high school and college, kids don't learn how to balance a checkbook, right? So
Yeah,
they go out in often that's the case. They go into the real world, they don't know how to balance a budget.
yeah,
Same thing with like, we're all going to die, but we are rarely talking about the fact that that is
yes.
coming and sometimes it comes sooner. And how do we have those conversations earlier with kids and adults and, across all the education at, medical school and other.
Yeah. So, can you tell us what George Mark is working on right now that listeners can support?
I would love to. Yes. So we've got a couple of really special things we're working on. We just completed a aquatic center. We have aquatic therapy offered to children and families that are staying at George Mark and their siblings. It was the size of a hot tub. And we have aquatic nurses that take the patients in for a calming, relaxing session, or some of these kids are having pool parties and music and playing basketball in the pool. So it's depending on the needs. We've just tripled the size of it. We've just completed the expansion
Wow.
project. It's done. It's active. It's live, and we're going to be touring it at our fall autumn celebration that's coming up in a week on September 27th. So that's the first thing is we've just completed this amazing aquatic center, and we're going to be the part two of that is an all abilities playground. We're building an all abilities playground right next to the pool because we've had a playground at George Mark in the past, but it wasn't wheelchair accessible. It was really for the siblings. But this playground is going to have a merry-go-round, and a swing and a magical harp and other equipment that wheelchairs can go in. This may be the first time ever that some of these kids will go in a swing or will go in a we go round, and they can go in with their siblings. So that we are in the middle of. It's a 4-phase project, and we have funding up to phase 2. So we need about $850,000 to complete this one. So if there's anyone out there who knows of organizations that would love to support an all abilities playground, or families or philanthropists, that would be amazing because we would so benefit from that, as would the children and families that come. The second piece is we are actively fundraising for our cancer care program. So that's another area where if there's families who want to help support having other families come at no cost to the family for oncology, respite, or end of life, we would welcome that. And then I'm building this, future state of George Mark with new funding streams
Mm.
for reimbursement. And we have a collaboration of system thinkers that are working on multiple workshops over the next 8 months. And we do need a little bit of funding to get that over the finish line. So those are 3 distinct projects that we'd welcome support. I'd also love to invite anyone who's listening to this to come to our autumn celebration on September 27th. Tickets are available online. I think this will go live maybe after that. I'm not sure what day it's going live.
It's going live at the end of October, so it is.
Okay, okay. So we have other events, but I would also say, as you're talking to other organizations, I'm sure, I assume there's some conversations around the concern for Medicaid funding cuts.
Yes.
I don't know if you've talked with organizations about that per se, but a third of our budget comes through California funded regional centers who reimburse George Mark for respite stays for children that come with life-limiting diagnosis and developmental disability. We're at risk of that funding getting cut from the regional centers if Medicaid cuts impact those regional centers at the state level. So we think we have probably 8 to 18 months until those cuts will start to trickle down, but it's severe. It's $3 million to George Mark. So all the more reason to just think of ways that there are people listening who want to support us and feel moved to make this part of their legacy, to support George Mark, to prepare for funding cuts that are coming, because we are definitely ideating and prospecting proactively for that. And we would welcome support for those unknowns. And I know there are many organizations that need it. And the dollars that come to George Mark, they go far. They touch the children right away, the families, the siblings, the support services. So we would welcome that if there's anyone out there that feels moved.
Do you have a donation page and do you accept volunteers also?
Yes, of course. So we can show in the link, we have a donate now button on our website, of course, that we can direct folks to if that feels like the right thing to do for that person. We would welcome it. And we also absolutely welcome volunteers. So volunteers are very much the heartbeat of George Mark. They spend the time with the patients, often reading to them, doing activities with them while the nurses are tending to the medical needs. And we also look for volunteers in our social media team, in our administrative side, working with our groundskeeper. So we have other projects too to support George Mark. And we're looking also for advocates to share more about what we do to the medical community and to other resources that should know about George Mark. So there's lots of ways that we would welcome support.
So I really, Shekinah, I'd love to thank you for being on the show today, for spending time with us, and for just all of the information and the heart that you've shared today. So thank you. Before we wrap up, can you share how people can learn more about George Mark's Children's House and how they can get in touch with you?
Traci, I want to thank you too. You have a beautiful podcast. You have a beautiful way of bringing people together around really important topics that are hard to talk about and are important and need to be talked about. So I just want to thank you for coming to George Mark and visiting and helping, advocate for what we do. And so thank you as well. You're a gift.
Thank you. I hope that I get to visit again soon because it's such a special, words just can't convey. That's all I'm saying. Words cannot convey how special your facility is. Thank you so much. Your home. It is an amazing place. And from the bottom of my heart, I so appreciate everything you guys do.
Thank you. I feel that. I will say, so if you'd like to learn more about George Mark, you can find more about us at georgemark.org. You can also contact me directly. I would welcome a conversation. My email is seliassen@georgemark.org. And if you're interested in coming to see a tour or to learn more about us, please reach out to me and we can sort that out. I really want to thank you for your time and for your interest and your passion in our work, and keep spreading the word about the importance of palliative care in pediatrics and adult services.
Thank you.
Lovely.
Folks, pediatric palliative and hospice care isn't something most of us think about until we have to. What you heard today is a reminder that there are better ways to care for children and families facing serious illnesses. Ways that center on comfort, dignity, and human connection. And while George Mark Children's House is just one place, it shows us what's possible when we treat families like whole people, not just patients. Thank you for joining us. If you've any questions, please comment below or reach out to me directly. And if you found this conversation to be helpful, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. This is Traci Arieli from Comforting Closure, wishing you peace and comfort in your journey. Until next time, take care.